everyone. Thanks for coming. So, Nicole, I just wanted to start by hearing a little bit from myself about how your weekend was at CONvergence.
Oh, sure. First of all, let me say thank you for being my moderator here, because I was terrified that I would have to talk just one-on-one about myself, and I feel like I've covered everything that's interesting this weekend already. So, I've had a great time this weekend. I am so honored to have been invited as a guest, because this is the first time I've been a guest at a convention. Now all future conventions will be judged against this one, and the bar is pretty darn high. Let's see, I love the Royal Manticore Navy. I spent a lot of time in their party room. I got my toast on, the House of Toast.
Oh, yeah.
We actually introduced my husband Brian to Dungeons & Dragons for the first time today. We did a role-playing adventure for him. Everyone was very nice. He got to hit things with the swords. That was good.
Did your character live?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow,
Which
that
is
is very
amazing.
kind.
And I got to hurt somebody.
That's what I'm saying. That's great. You walk away from it. But yeah, I've been so impressed by everyone's creativity and skill, and the fact that this is volunteer run is amazing. I mean, it works so well. Everyone was always there. I had wonderful support from people like telling me where to go, making sure I got where I needed to be, just chatting with people about any number of awesome fan things. What can I say? I had a really great time.
Awesome. Awesome. So I have a few questions, and then we can open it up for Q&A. So you've got a long and varied career in both acting and writing. When you're doing one or the other, how do they inform one another, your experiences? Do you take acting experiences into writing and vice versa?
Yes, definitely. I actually was very lucky to, I was really lucky to have started out as an actress, because it really helped me learn kind of the format of script and the pacing of comedy at a very early age. I feel like because I was exposed to that so young, it kind of became part of my DNA and really helped me become a writer. So somehow subconsciously that was in the back of my brain when I became a writer. Script format just makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah, and now as a writer, when I went back to do voice acting, I feel like I know what the writer intends when I read action lines, or if I can feel how the pacing of a scene should go, if that makes any sense. It's almost like a music that you hear in your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the two are definitely related. And writing is basically acting on the page to me, because you get to play all the characters as you're writing what they say. So, yeah.
Do you read back to yourself your scripts?
Absolutely.
And act them all out?
Yeah, I do. Well, I act out the fight scenes, right? Because that's probably the best way to choreograph them, although it's kind of crazy to watch. A little bit of Matrix action on my own. And
I think if you videotape that, you could have some YouTube sensations.
Oh, hey now, that's a good plan. Don't get any ideas, Brian. Yeah, I was just going to say that if you stuck up on me when I was writing, you would hear me talking to myself. So that's always fun when you take your computer to Starbucks and you just look like you're muttering to yourself because you have to read all the dialogue. So.
For acting, do you also talk to yourself out in the world? I know myself as an actor, I'll go for a walk to try to memorize something and then realize that I'm just yelling about Star Wars and penis jokes out loud. I'm like, oh, I should stop that.
I don't think you should stop that. That's awesome. Yes, definitely when you have to memorize long speeches, that is the best way. The walking, I think, definitely. I remember doing a lot of that for, I had to do speeches in college, and so I would just like walk the campus, like you said, yelling, St. Crispin's Day speech, right, to people, trying to motivate them to cross the street or something, I don't know.
Yeah. So I understand you started acting at a very young age. How did you make the transition to writing? Was it kind of like, did you fall into it, or did you make a really conscious choice of I want to have this be a part of my life as well?
Yeah, I really kind of fell into it, and that's what's interesting, I think, about the industry, is that there really is no straight line. Everyone has a different story of how they got in. I knew that I wanted to be back in the industry when I went to college, but at that point I was really focused on, no, I'm going to be pre-med, that's what I'm going to take care of, and have a biology major. And I had this moment in lab class where we had to artificially inseminate a mouse, and my mouse died on the table, and I felt so bad. And I realized at that moment, okay, if I feel this way about a mouse, I probably shouldn't be a doctor. And that was kind of this great changing point when I realized, yeah, and I'm really good at English, and organic chemistry is taking a lot of work, but I could just kind of sail through writing papers. Maybe I should switch my major. So I became an English major, and then at that point, when I graduated, I had a year in San Francisco, working at a .com, still unsure what to do with an English major. But then I realized that the industry is really where I need to be, and writing seemed the easiest way for me to kind of get into that.
Okay.
because you need to have a lot of experience as a director if you're going to become a director.
Right.
You know, and you need to spend a lot of time learning the craft. And I feel like for me, writing is like, well, I know script format, I can try that. So
Yeah.
that's why.
So did your previous success as an actor allow you to kind of get into the door pretty quickly?
It did.
writing-wise?
I had a lot of meetings with people. I didn't actually get any jobs from the people that I knew previously, but they allowed me to ask them questions.
Okay.
You know, like, what is the best way to do this? What kind of specs should I have? You know, speculative scripts to send out to people. You know, what's the trend right now in hiring? Things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And I read on your bio that you were a guest star on Elf.
Yes.
Is that true?
It is true.
I should say on your bio on Wikipedia, so I wanted to clarify
Oh,
that was
okay.
true because I read it on
Oh,
Wikipedia.
right. Source check.
So Elf, I'm fascinated by Elf. How old were you when you were on Elf?
I think I might have been like 8 or 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any sense that it was just incredibly freakish television when you were 9 in a guest star on Elf?
Well, okay, it was already super bizarre because Anne Ramsey was also a guest star on that episode,
Oh, wow.
which to me was like, it's the lady from Goonies. Oh my gosh, I'm terrified.
Yeah.
You know, but she was super nice. Yeah, and the other odd thing for me was that the set was built high up because, you know, you need to have a place for the puppet people to work for this elf puppet. And so that was totally bizarre, that you could actually fall off a set and hurt yourself previously if you did.
Yeah.
So that was all odd. I watched Alf at that age, so it was very exciting to be
Yeah.
on the set. But one other story about that is that when I went back to school, all the kids wanted to know, was Alf real? Like, that was the question. Is Alf real? Is that, you know, or is it a midget in a suit was the other question I got a lot of. And, you know, is it a puppet? And at this young age, I thought, I am not going to betray the secrets of this show. It is up to me to keep the fiction alive. So I said, Alf is totally real. He's absolutely real. You know, he only comes out to perform, and yes, he does eat cats. It's like, so yeah, that's when I knew I should probably be a storyteller.
Did people accept that as an answer?
Well, I got a lot of, come on, but you know what, kids at that age, they still aren't sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I found it fascinating in my youth because it was some more science fiction on television.
Right.
But not quite.
Right, exactly.
Pretty close to Star Wars, but not really.
Science sitcom, fiction.
So it seems like you've had a lot of experiences in sort of genre things, like Elf, but like specifically Young Justice, in contrast to other things that are a little bit more mainstream, like Major Dad.
Yeah.
So have you found that, for example, with Young Justice, are those fans more intense than other fans from like mainstream worlds?
That's interesting. I think whenever you're going to write in a beloved world, you get intense fans that are watching very carefully what you do with their characters. And so you have to be, you know, super careful yourself when you're writing in that world to make sure that you're serving the character the way they should be served. And there's definitely a lot of response you get immediately.
Yeah.
You know, online for that. So yeah, I think that you kind of just get this aegis put on you to do those characters justice, so to say. So to speak. But, yeah, that's the only thing. I mean, with Major Dad, it was a totally different group of people that were, you know, it was just as important to them because it was the Marine Corps. And one of the things we got to do with Major Dad was actually visit the troops before they would go out, and we did a lot of stuff with the troops and their families, which I think was important for the veracity of the show, you know?
Yeah.
So we learned what it was like to be a military family. I'm actually an honorary Marine. I have a certificate saying that.
Wow.
Yeah, because of all the work we did with them, and we got to meet the commandant and stuff like that. So each time you take on a show, I mean, it's that sudden realization that this is very important to a group of people, you know, and you got to treat it carefully.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that connection with Major Dad, and that's really interesting to me because like I think we're really used to in the sort of the convention world and geeks being really obsessive about a thing that they like, but then sometimes I think we kind of other mainstream shows. So then to think that there's always some niche of
Right.
super obsessive
There's,
geeky
exactly.
people.
There's always someone who cares deeply.
Yes, those geeky Marines. So you have a lot of different writing credits. It seems like in the past like 10 to 15 years, like a lot of different kinds of things. How do they connect in your mind? Do you try to bring your own voice? Do you like want people to watch like a specific cartoon and be like, that's a Nicole script, and be able to recognize that?
Yeah, I guess I'm always trying to tell the best story I can. Like, that's kind of the main focus. But I think that when you hire Nicole, you're going to get more puns than average. Like, that's one of the things I think is pretty consistent with my shows. I like to have character moments, character quips. You know, whenever you're handed a show, of course you have to write the tone of that show and for those characters. So your voice kind of gets filtered in a way. And I haven't had a lot of my own projects. I think Rescue Bots is probably my closest experience to just being able to create characters from whole cloth.
Okay.
And, you know, that's kind of my intense voice there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you want to create more things that are just yours, or do you enjoy playing in other people's sandboxes more?
You know, sometimes there's a delight to being handed a bunch of characters and saying, okay, now what do I do with all these people? So there's joy on both sides.
Yeah.
You know, there's the love of the creation when you can have all these babies that are yours, and then there's also like, yeah, I want to come play and with all these other writers and try to build a world together.
Cool, cool. If somebody came to you and just said, you have to have a show that you write and you have to star in it, it's not even your choice, it just has to be done.
Oh, twist my arm.
What would you want to do if it was just a total you project?
Oh man. Okay, so if you've hung out with me this weekend, I love werewolves. I don't know if anybody's found that out. I would love to do a werewolf show, a cartoon werewolf show, and I don't know how this would translate, but Patricia Briggs is one of my favorite authors, and I think that it'd be really great to use her character Mercy.
Oh, okay.
In something, yeah. So that's what I would do.
And would you want to portray a werewolf?
Oh heck yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, would you want it to be cartoon or real life?
I think we need a cartoon werewolf show right
Yeah.
now. Definitely.
Yeah, just that's what the world needs.
That's what the world needs. Yeah.
And deserves. I also read on Wikipedia, so make sure that it's accurate, that you wrote something, an interactive thing for a cruise ship.
Yeah, I did.
So yeah, what was that about?
So it was kind of crazy. It was a Kim Possible cruise ship activity, and I can't even remember what cruise line it is now, but we were on. It must have been for the Disney cruise, yeah, because my nephew participated in this when we took a Disney cruise. And basically, you had to find clues all over the ship. You were tracking down, I think, villains, and you had some kind of check-in you would do with your communicator. They gave you a communicator, and so yeah, I wrote it. It was just kind of like an interactive activity, kind of like a small game, like
Okay.
a party game. But yeah, I said, oh, can I get cruise tickets to check it out and see? And they're like, no, you can't. So but I guess it was a success. My nephew enjoyed it when he played it.
So did you ever go through and play it yourself?
I did not. I was told that I was too old. So, I know,
Really?
sad face. I know, it was like for the kids' entertainment only, yeah.
Why don't we can't all be children?
I know, right? I'm like, come on, guys.
That's fascinating to me that they actively prohibited you.
Well, yeah, I guess maybe it was also like, we have all these kids, we don't want an adult like mixing with them.
Okay, yeah, because it isn't cruises.
Exactly. Somebody might say, look at my naked mole rat,
I have some werewolf stories I want to pitch to you kids. Is that appropriate? Well, we wanted to open it up to, does the audience have any? Gordon.
Actually, there was a similar Kim Possible thing at the theme park.
Yes.
Did you write that one too?
I didn't write that one. No, I
Okay.
think Mark and Bob wrote that one.
Okay.
But,
That was
yeah,
very
it was the
cool.
same kind of thing.
We did that.
Did you?
Yeah.
It's Phineas and Ferb now, right? They
Yep.
changed it?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's
But
a lot of fun.
it was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
You get the little communicator and it talks to you and gives you clues. And,
Yeah.
you'd be walking through the park and suddenly, beep, 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 and you go, oh,
Right.
it's Kim Possible.
I love it. Some people still have that as like their ringtone, and
Yeah.
occasionally I'll hear it when I'm out, and it's just like this one. It's a summons.
Does it make you feel like you have work to do, that you're supposed to be doing something impossible?
Exactly. I'm like, someone needs help.
That's wonderful. Other questions?
Did you help out with any Kim Possible episodes?
Yes, I was an apprentice staff writer on season 2, so that meant I basically got to be in all the meetings, which was really exciting. And we would pitch story ideas. And Mark and Bob, the guys who ran the show, at one point said, I need you to go make a list of all the activities you can do in high school ever because we need story ideas. And so I was doing a lot of research, and I'm like, okay, I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, so that might be slightly different than what you're looking for. But yeah, I did some research. So I wrote 3 episodes that season, and then I was on staff on another Disney show, so I wasn't able to work on the 3rd season, but I came back and wrote on the 4th season. So, yeah.
Was there a favorite episode that you wrote, or a favorite story?
My favorite episode that I got to write was Bad Boy, where Ron becomes a supervillain. It was a lot of fun. And then Go Team Go was also a lot of fun.
Cool. Other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Instead of a cartoon werewolf, would you consider a puppet werewolf?
Oh, that's a great idea. Yes, absolutely. But that's so funny because people always say that it's really hard to do transformation in puppetry. Actually, I want to throw this question back to you. How do you do transformation in puppetry?
Well, the world is full of digital now. We can make all kinds of
Like a
magic.
hybrid. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect.
You know, do you use digital for what it really helps with.
Okay, Gordon, are we developing a show after this or what?
Yes,
Okay, all right, done.
absolutely.
Can there just be a wall? Yeah, sure, yeah, I'd love that, yeah. Can there be like a wall, and then there's just a human puppet, and they're other puppet comes up.
That's cool.
Oh, we could do this. We could do a transformation from one to the other via shadow puppets in between.
Wow.
See?
Stylize it up, yeah.
Oh, that's so
What?
funny. Okay,
It'd be cool if it started as a human and then turned into a puppet werewolf. Then you got
there you go. Not just a werewolf.
many levels
I'm
of
up, right.
Yeah.
Call back to the.
That's multi-quadrant.
Oh, now you're just
Like
talking
that.
silly.
No, you don't live in Los Angeles,
I
right?
do, yes, I live in
Oh, you do?
Pasadena.
Oh, okay.
So, I actually from Orange County, so when I was a kid, I would make that 50-mile commute back and forth, and I did that for a while in my writing career, and then I realized, no, I really need to move closer.
Okay. So do you take a lot of meetings right now? Do you actively look for new writing jobs? Are you happy with what you have in the moment, or?
I do look for work for sure. Right now, I'm show running Rescue Bots and doing some freelance, so I actually should be back in my room writing right now. But yeah, my agent helps me find work, and then also it's such a tight-knit animation community that a lot of times if you're friends on a show, they'll contact you and say, hey, are you available for this?
Mhm. And do you end up doing any voices on shows that you write, or is that sort of crossing the streams?
It may in fact be, but I do it anyway. Yes, so I was on Young Justice, and I play a couple characters on Rescue Bots, and I did a voice in the Disney show Miles from Tomorrowland. So it's something I'd like to pursue more. Actually, it's really fun to do.
Yeah.
And it's kind of safer acting because it's you're not being judged on what you look like. It's really just pure acting in your voice.
Yeah.
So that's what I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think voiceover is really exciting.
Can you
for
do
the-
an example? Pick a character and do a little.
Okay, sure. Well, Iris West Allen on Young Justice is basically me doing a newscaster voice. So that's not really, it's just, a lot more like, CONvergence is an all-ages event. Please watch your language if children are present. So it's more, I guess, stilted in a sense. And then Mrs. Lusky on Rescue Bots is much more, she's like, yeah. She's very much more of a Valley Girl, a little bit breathy Marilyn Monroe kind of person. So yeah, those are some examples. I don't know. Oh, okay, I'll take it. Do you do any voice acting?
Yeah, I haven't done any like proper voice acting in LA, but I live in LA now, but I spent a lot of time here in Minneapolis, and I recorded some comedy sketches, for my own production and that kind of thing.
Do you do accents as well as silly voices, or what do you do?
Kind of.
Yeah.
I do accents that make sense to me.
Oh,
But
right.
I have never been a sort of like, oh, would you like a spot on Cockney? No, that's not what, that's not what I do. Do you, for voiceovers for the most part, is it you are recording your own line of dialogue by yourself and you're not playing off of other actors, or does it vary?
It can vary. In Disney, it was just one person in the booth. In Rescue Bots, we usually record radio play style, and I'm usually in the room with someone like Jeff Bennett, who's amazing, has done a million voices. Okay, so you're just like, please be nice to me, and they're very encouraging and nice. Or like if I'm in with D. Bradley Baker, happens sometimes too, and I'm just like, oh, the master of all the animal voices in the world. Okay, but it's fun to play off with people.
Yeah. Do you prefer that, or do you prefer?
Yeah,
doing
I
all
would
of
say,
those?
I would say, it's worth the possible embarrassment to get to play off people. And then when we were doing Young Justice, there's a scene where the whole Flash family is having this surprise birthday party, so we had to all yell surprise at the same time. And it's very funny how when you have to communicate without speaking, that we're all going to go at the same time and everyone's watching each other. It was really odd, and then people would miss the cue. They would be like, surprise, surprise! So that took a couple takes for us, but
Yeah, that's really great. Other questions? Yeah. Mm-hmm.
As a writer, do you ever see yourself branching out into a different genre than you currently write, or are you just so happy writing what you write right now that you want to do it forever?
I would love to write novels, and the problem is when I come home, it's hard to write when you've been writing. Although I've noticed that sometimes it's easier to just sit down and pound out pages of a novel because it's just purely my voice. Like back to the idea of what's yours and if you're writing for somebody else. And it's just so much easier to just do stream of consciousness and get that on the page for me. So I actually did a reading here. I read something that I'd written for a novel I'm trying to finish here for the first time, and it was really great. It was neat to be able to share that. So fingers crossed I'll be able to do more of that.
Yeah. Do you feel like it was well received? You're happy with the experience?
Yeah, I was really happy. And again, everybody has been so kind and welcoming, so I don't know if they actually liked it or not and were politely laughing, but I'll take it. So, it was good.
So what genre is your work? We didn't get to hear it because we're constantly, against everyone else on the schedule. But
Right,
what's the book?
This will not surprise you. It's urban fantasy.
Okay.
And werewolves. I actually just learned last night. I was talking to some literary agents, and they were saying that it's really hard to sell urban fantasy right now because there's so many authors on the market that are doing that. So she was saying maybe you should try to sell it as a different, like contemporary fantasy, or write something completely different. And then, because I guess just like with TV, you get in these like cycles, or movies. We've got a ton of superhero stuff right now, whereas that wouldn't have happened 15 years ago. It was really just laughed at. So right now we've got a lot of urban fantasy, and then we'll go. And then for a while it was epic fantasy. Everybody was writing epic fantasy. Dystopian YA, right?
How about suburban fantasy?
Oh, that's so cool, right?
Housewives turning into werewolves.
That's good.
Puppet
The real
werewolves.
werewolves.
I like the idea of the real world werewolves, like there are a lot of fake werewolves out there.
Right. Well, that's kind of what I was trying to do with my book, is that it's really more of like, this, it's kind of like Mad Men meets urban fantasy. I mean, this werewolf is an ad executive that gets hired by a master vampire who needs to improve his image. So that's the kind of the conceit of the book. So,
yeah. Well, that sounds great, because it sounds like it is playing with a lot of different genres and elements.
That's what I was kind of hoping to do.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about kind of your sort of instinctual rhythms from starting early on acting. How does that kind of translate to the novel? Does it feel really freeing, like you don't have to worry about any sort of the rhythmic constraints of it being said by anyone other than you?
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe so. I feel like it's still very dialogue-y to me. When I'm writing it, it's still the pacing is still kind of how people would speak. I'm always kind of filtering for that, so I don't know if I could divorce myself from that. But you get a chance to do a lot more of like, here's what the character's thinking, which is something you never really get to do in TV and film. So I'm giving a lot more backstory as to why this person is saying this without, because I'm basically acting again on the page. There's no image to accompany it. So I'm putting what their facial expression would be and why it's that way. And, yeah.
Cool. When you're writing for animation, what are the sort of budget thoughts in terms of, like, obviously when you're writing live action, you generally know, like, I can only have so many explosions,
Right.
there can only be one ninja that falls from the ceiling or whatever. What kind of things like that exist for animation? What is too expensive for animation?
Right. Well, like you said, actually it's the same kind of thing. Sometimes we can only have one ninja, or we can have a bunch of similarly dressed ninjas that all move the same way at the same time. We get that a lot. Sometimes in a cartoon you'll see characters with helmets on because it's just easier to animate. Like you won't have to do lip flap, when they're talking. Let's see, what else? Big set pieces, we always get notes on keeping the set pieces a little bit smaller, more manageable. In certain types of CG animation, you can't do like water effects. That'll blow the budget a lot of times. So please keep characters out of water. There's all kinds of things like don't use a rope in CG because characters all have to link up to it. It's very hard to make all these models interact. Don't have too many characters on the screen at one time. Yeah, lots of stuff like that. But it's totally different from live action, like you were saying, because when I started writing some live action stuff, there was this realization that these are real props. Like I've been just writing these cartoon props. So if I blow up a car, it doesn't matter. But I destroyed a violin in a live action script I had written because it was a children's horror show, and the violin gets smashed as part of this. And I realized, oh my gosh, I just killed a real violin. It's like, wait a minute, these are real props. I suddenly have all this responsibility to them. So.
I removed a violin from the world. Monster.
Oh my gosh.
So you just said the phrase children's horror show like that was a normal thing.
Oh, is it not? Well,
I think it should be. What was the children's horror show?
so I've written for R.L. Stein's The Haunting Hour and for
Okay.
Christopher Pike's Spooksville. So I read both of those authors growing up, so when I got a chance to write that, it was really, really fun. And yeah, it's interesting to do that line of horror, that it's scary but not too scary,
Yeah.
and gruesome but not too gruesome. So it's really funny. So like I had a leprechaun character in one of them, an evil leprechaun, not surprisingly. And we were supposed to show how creepy he was, and there was this songbird in one thing that he's looking at, and then we cut back to him, and he's got these feathers sticking out of his mouth. And I got the note back saying, you know, can it not be a songbird? You know, can he be just holding a chicken leg? And I'm like, okay, well, that kind of undoes what we're going for here, but like that was the line of gruesome.
He
You know?
killed my sweet loving chicken leg.
Oh no! More poultry blood on my hands. But
Yeah, makes it pretty wacky.
it does.
It'd be
Yeah.
a rubber chicken instead. That'd be
Right, exactly, and funnier.
So for the animation budget stuff, has that become really instinctual as well?
In some ways, I still, you know, we still get notes saying, hey, can you make this scene a little bit smaller? Do all the characters have to go on this adventure together? Can we do some cutaway? I think, yeah, you do just start to know that, especially when you start storytelling other people's scripts. Then you have to make those changes before it goes to network, so you start looking for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for you, it's mostly like a second pass thing, or is it something where it starts to become part of the writing process?
I think it starts to become part of the writing process. Yeah, I would say you just automatically start to do that.
Yeah. I'm just curious because for myself, I used to write a lot of theater, and that became a big part of my process of just
Sure.
in your writer brain always, what can't I do?
Right, is this
Because
relatable?
then I'll discover what you can do within that. And I
Right.
was curious how much with something like animation,
Right.
where you're sitting there saying like, I want this to be full of water. I want the scene to just be many, many people holding a rope in the water.
Exactly. Underwater tug of war. Oh man, yeah. Well, it's interesting to me to hear about the theater perspective of that, because it's like, yeah, you have to generate your props and also transition stuff. I'm always interested to see like the musical numbers that are chosen in what order, because you're like, oh, the lead needs a break right now. That's
Yeah.
why this is this musical number, right? Things like that.
Yeah. And to me, it's interesting because it's kind of a different perspectives on process,
Mhm.
where you certainly can, and many people I know prefer that, just like, I'll just write whatever, and then in the magic of theater, we'll figure out a way to communicate
Right.
that. And just for myself, my own personality, I have too much of a producer brain,
Mhm.
where it's like, I'm not gonna let writer me make work for producer me.
Right.
So when I'm writing, I'm gonna figure it out, which is part of the reason I was curious about that whole sort of, your process and your perspective
Sure.
of how much you think about it the first time, or how much you let your imagination go wild and then
Right. Yeah.
reel it back in.
Well, a lot of people do say, like, especially new writers, are like, I love animation. You can do anything in animation. And I'm like, well, actually, let's look at that budget first. So,
Yeah. So how much live action stuff have you written?
I've only actually had produced those horror shows that I was talking about. I've written a spec Gilmore Girls and a spec CSI, which is basically how you audition for writing on shows. So that was when I first started. I had those, and I would send out these samples. But other than that, nothing really. I'd love to do more. Because writing is writing. That's the thing too. Is like there's different rules. There are different rules in each in genre and world that you work in. But writing is writing.
Yeah.
You know, at the core, I think.
Yeah, and it seems like you really embrace that. I mean, I know some people in LA who are like, no, I do this and I do exactly this.
Oh, right.
So I think it's great that you.
I think you gotta diversify, especially in LA, right? You'll always be working if you can just do something. So.
Yeah. Any other questions in the audience?
Is there anything that you read or watched growing up that you feel influences your voice now?
Sure. I watched a lot of cartoons growing up, so it's kind of not surprising that this is where I got my first job, and this is how I started out. I loved the 80s cartoons. I loved The Real Ghostbusters and Thundercats, and I'd watch the Disney Afternoon when I'd come home from school. And my parents always encouraged it too. My dad would watch cartoons with me on Saturday morning. We loved The Tick, that was our favorite. And then even in college, I'd come back, I had an hour break between class and dinner, and I'd watch the Batman Superman hour. And of course then we had Tiny Toons, and we had Pinky and the Brain, and just so much good stuff. And I love that humor, and I also love the idea we try to use this in Rescue Bots. If you were in one of my other panels, I said this already, so apologies if you've heard it, but I call it the Egon principle, because if Egon says we have 30 seconds to capture this ghost or else the city is destroyed, you believe him. That's all you need to know. Egon has said it, he is our authority. And I love that shorthand in Rescue Bots, you know, if they say, this is the only way to stop this Decepticon. Well, we don't have Decepticons, but you know what I'm saying. Then you believe them, right? And you don't have to spend all this bogged down time explaining it. It's like, we just want to see the characters in action go, you know? So, I like that.
Cool. So you wrote a Gilmore Girls spec script, you said?
I did, yes.
Now, did you choose that, or was that something that was hot in the industry at the time you were doing specs?
Well, so when I had gone back and talked to some of my contacts, like you'd mentioned, people that were on Major Dad, I reached out to one of the producers, and he said, you know, you should try writing a Gilmore Girls script. I had not seen the show, I didn't know the show. So I did this really crash course in learning the show, and I went to the Writers Guild library, and they have all the shows there to watch, they have all the scripts that are accessible, so I did this really like deep, learn everything. I went online and fans had written down transcripts.
Oh, wow.
You know, so I learned that way, and then I just did it. And it was a funny show, actually. I mean, when I started watching it, I really enjoyed it because of the back and forth, the verbal patter.
Yeah.
And those scripts were always 10 pages longer than most hours because the dialogue was so fast.
Yeah.
So I was happy to do that, and for me, I was so excited to find out they hadn't done the story already because, you know, the main character, Lorelai, was addicted to coffee. Like, that was her thing. And so one of the easiest ways to write a script is take away what the main character likes or needs the most. And they hadn't done that. So I had her giving up coffee. With her daughter was giving up electronics, and she was giving up coffee. It was this challenge that the school was doing. For Rory, it was about like living like Thoreau. And so, and then her mom was like, well, I have the same kind of fortitude, I can do this too. So we kind of traced that through the
Yeah. Are people Gilmore Girl fans?
Anybody watch that? No? Okay, sorry, see? But there is a niche of geeks out there that are geeks for that too, so.
Yeah,
Myself included now.
I watched all of it with my wife, and
Okay.
yeah, and we'll probably watch it again.
All right.
It was a very good viewing experience because I'll give Gilmore Girls a try, and I liked the writing,
Yeah.
and I became too invested.
Right. As
I had
that.
strong opinions about Rory's boyfriend.
Oh,
My
yes,
wife and I had some
absolutely.
serious conversations and
Yeah.
one actual fight about it. So.
Wow.
Very, very powerful. So for people who watch the show, I mean, it's kind of rare in Hollywood to have a show that is that packed with dialogue.
Yeah.
You know, you hadn't done a lot of writing when you tackled this as a spec script.
No.
That's like insanely impressive to me.
Oh, thanks.
I mean,
I think that, I guess not knowing what you can't do is a really good shield. Like, I think it's a Mark Twain quote that I've totally butchered just now. Ignorance is armor or something like that, but yeah.
yeah.
Just jumped in.
And did that lead, that particular script lead you somewhere in your path?
It's funny, it got me an interview with an agent, and it also was one of the scripts that I gave to Kim Possible guys when they hired me. And I had, this experience with an agent was possibly the worst I've ever had, ever. Like, worst interaction with a person ever. And it's so great that I can look back and laugh now. But when I went in, he was like, well, what's your story? And I said, well, I'd like to be a writer, and, you know, I went to college with an English degree, but what's your story? And I was like, I don't know what he's asking me. You know, I have my spec script, and he goes, you have to have a story. You have to go out there and you have to sell yourself. I don't want this little girl sitting on this couch who doesn't know what she wants. You better think about what you really want to be out there. Stop wasting my time. And I walked out and I was like, this is back to acting. I have to have this like persona and this character, or maybe I don't have to go with this agent. So yeah, that was, you know, there's failure. There's lots of failure along the way, but sometimes it's really helpful failure.
Yeah.
You know, to realize, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the best thing for me.
Yeah, you decide what you want
Yeah.
to make out of it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Other questions in the audience?
So with the, you know, we always hear about the underrepresentation of minorities and women in Hollywood and the power structures and whatnot. Is that paralleled in the animation world, or is it different for pay and power and influence?
You know, I feel really lucky. A lot of my colleagues are just awesome people, and so it really hasn't been an issue. Like, I feel like they hire the best writer for the job, and they don't look at gender or race or anything like that. I mean, I feel like animation, I don't know, maybe because we're kind of like the redheaded stepchild of television, we're just more inclusive in some ways. So yeah, for me, it's like when I'm writing, it's not necessarily about a female voice. It depends on whatever the character is. So sometimes it's a talking cow, and sometimes it's a an alien, and then sometimes it's a guy, and sometimes it's a girl, and yeah. So I feel kind of lucky that I don't deal with that as much. I just write, and I try to write like characters that represent the world when I'm writing an animation, because I think that that's probably the best way in to defeating, I guess, prejudice, is to expose kids to just seeing all kinds of different people and characters in animation. It's kind of like, I like to think of it as guerrilla warfare.
I think it's very smart. How often do you encounter just sort of gender-blind characters like we're talking about? Like it's a cow from space, and like how often is there just like it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman voicing this kind of character? Do you think that happens a lot, or?
It happens. I mean, sometimes, like more so in animation, obviously,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, I mean, really, I'm trying to think of good examples of this, but it'll happen a lot. At Nickelodeon, though, I mean, they will only cast a voice actor. They have a character that has race. They will only cast a voice actor of that race. They honor that.
Cool.
And I think they do that actually at most studios, but I remember encountering it especially at Nickelodeon, at Disney as well. So by writing these characters, we're also employing minority race, so you have to make these decisions as a writer. Like,
Yeah.
It's a big deal. I was going to tell you guys a Rescue Bot spoiler for season 4, but I can't. But I will say, this has been announced, that we're going to have a female Rescue Bot character in season 4, which is really a great thing.
Yeah.
I'm really happy. And now we have our female action figure is finally out. She was the last family member to get released, but she did get released, so
Wow.
thank goodness.
Was that a battle? Did that have to be made into an issue to make that happen?
I think Hasbro has been listening to people saying, hey, we want the whole family.
Yeah.
I think that instinctively, because it's a boys' toy line in their mind, they just want to market to boys. And there's kind of been this idea that boys won't buy female characters, which I don't think is actually real if it's ever tested. But it's the knowledge that's known, and it's really scary when you're spending money to take a risk. And that's why no is always the easier answer in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Until somebody else does it and succeeds wildly, the answer is going to be no. And then once they succeed wildly, everybody's going to be like, I want that.
Yeah.
So,
We were going to do that next.
yeah, exactly.
If they had made the female Autobots back in G1 days, I would have bought them.
Right, for sure. We all would have, right? Yeah.
You'd probably still buy them if they made them now, right?
That's right. I don't collect the toys anymore.
Shoot. Other questions?
Well, kind of a general industry question. Is it's this is probably more a live action question. With so much production now being done outside of LA, is it still true that for especially for someone trying to break in as a writer, you pretty much have to live in LA to do that?
It's kind of one of the things I say is if people are serious about it, that they should move to LA. And then once you've established yourself, it's a lot easier to live somewhere else. But when you're in LA, you'll bump into people in coffee shops, or waiting in line at the grocery store that you can just talk to and network with. And it's just that extra leg up that helps you get that job. But you're right, production is going everywhere. There's a big tax credit that just passed for Los Angeles that's going to try to get production back there. Canada is another great place. If you have any dual citizenship, boy, you can work as a writer in Canada, a voice actor in Canada. That's another wonderful place. Animation is huge in Canada.
Other questions?
So some people will write for certain actors or with certain actors in mind. Do you write for certain voice actors, or do you cast voice actors for the character that you've written?
We rarely have a budget at a TV level to write for an actor that's well established, unless you're calling in a favor. So usually it's just the character, although sometimes you can write in the style of, and you know what you want, and there are great voice mimics out there. There's an actor named Eric Bauza who is doing Puss in Boots right now. He does an amazing Antonio Banderas. He also does an amazing Paul Giamatti. So if you wanted that kind of voice, you would hire maybe one of those doubles and say, can you give it this flavor, But usually I think I'm just writing for the character. Yeah, I mean, we've done well, now I'm gonna do another spoiler. Sorry, guys.
You're done. It's utterly swallowed.
Exactly, suddenly the NDA just kicked in.
Wonderful. Do you have a favorite actor that you work with a lot?
Oh gosh. let's see, I'm a huge fan of the voice actors. Like I mentioned Jeff Bennett already. Maurice LaMarche is incredible. Steve Bloom is great. Pre-Summer, Kath Soucie. I mean, there's so much talent out there in the voice world that I love. Getting a chance to work with Alan Tudyk was pretty awesome.
Oh, wow.
Because I was a big fan of Wash, so I wore a dinosaur shirt to take a picture with him. But yeah, and then also this was really funny. I think George Eads, is that his name? He was Nick on CSI, if anybody watched CSI. So remember one of my first specs was CSI, and then he ended up playing my husband on Young Justice. And so it was this weird kind of like circular path that I had taken. It was like, I wrote for you, and then now I'm married to you, kind of, in animation world.
Do you see, from my perspective, I think social media has allowed some voiceover actors to kind of get their due as stars and to kind of become personalities in their own right. Do you see that having any sort of positive or even negative sort of effect on the industry, that some people have a little bit more power because they have 200,000 followers?
I'd love them to have more power. I think that's one of the unfortunate things is that there's this trend to just cast celebrity, especially in feature for voice work, because of the name, the idea that the name will draw in people, adults. That kids will go see a movie because it's cartoon, but adults will come in for the name actors. And that can be really sad because voice actors that are just, known for just being voice actors are incredible. They are masters of their craft. The fact that they're getting looked over because they don't have celebrity status makes me so sad. So I want them to have more of their due. I'm glad people are realizing, oh, I like that voice, that's very talented. We had some great documentaries out too about that.
Yeah.
Did you see those? In a World, and then also I Know That Voice.
I Know That Voice,
Yeah. Those are some great documentaries if you guys are interested in voice acting. So yeah, I'm all for that. They should definitely get all that.
Awesome. We have a few more minutes. Any other questions?
Are there any series on TV right now that you'd love to be a writer on?
Oh gosh, yeah, let me think. Well, there's also a lot of series that have been canceled that I'd love to be a writer on, but I would like to have a crack at Arrow. That'd be nice. What else? What am I forgetting, Brian? What am I always like?
So you think you can dance for that?
That's not it. I just don't want to be on. Yeah, I mean, I could say like Veronica Mars would have been a show I would love to work on. Of course, Buffy. Everybody would say Buffy, right?
Maybe you can write the next Veronica Mars movie.
There we go. Exactly.
That they, Kickstarter for.
Right. I totally would support that Kickstarter. I love Rob Thomas's projects. I still haven't watched iZombie, so maybe if I watch that, maybe I would.
iZombie is really good.
Is it
Very,
really good?
very Veronica Mars-ish.
Yeah, I bet you I would love that show. Okay, that's my homework.
Good.
But yeah, how about you? Let me turn the tables to you. What would you write on right now?
Oh, I'd like to write Arrow. That would be fun. Yeah. One of my just favorite sort of weird, we live in the future moments. I follow William Shatner on Twitter. And every once in a while he live tweets Arrow, and sometimes with spoilers. And there's one evening I got mad, and then I took a step back, like, I have a computer that I can hold in my hand, and Captain Kirk will tell me things about Green Arrow's TV show. This is something I never could have imagined was possible. But I still mute him because I don't want to hear the spoilers. I love anything that's a combination of comedy and story, and anything where the comedy is really coming from the honesty of the characters. So that's always the kind of stuff that I'm interested in writing.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. I think that comedy is so important to storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you're telling the darkest story imaginable, you have to have that levity in character.
Yeah. I think, of all the shows that you mentioned, enjoying working on or wanting to work on all have that element. And I think even though Arrow can be very straight-faced,
right,
it's always had a great sense of humor.
Sure, yeah. I think Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. does that well too, I think. That balance, that Joss Whedon-y kind of action and comedy.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
I read a couple months ago that Disney's going to be bringing back DuckTales. Are you planning on auditioning to work on that show?
I'll bet I know who's going to be running that show, so I'll probably be knocking on their door, right? Like a bottle of wine and some chocolate. Hey guys, I need a writer. Yeah, I would love to be involved in any of the Disney stuff that comes back. I was a big fan. I'm really sad. I regret that I wasn't able to write on the Thundercats reboot because that would have been. Yeah. I was just too busy at that time. They offered me to come pitch, but I couldn't. So
With your extensive resume at this point, when the show comes up and you're like, I do want to get on that, what is the process like for you? Is it a little bit easier, a little bit more direct?
It can be, yeah, especially if I know somebody on it, then I can just say, hey guys, please consider me for this. If I don't know anybody on it, then I contact my agent and say, do you know anybody on this? Please put my name in. And then you usually submit your scripts. And you know, it's hard too, because when you are a story editor, you want to go back to the people who've delivered for you. So sometimes
Right.
it's hard to hire somebody you don't know. So it's hit and miss. But
Yeah.
I definitely go out for what I try to get, you know.
And you didn't have to have many experiences like the one you were relating earlier about the agent.
Not
you know,
anymore.
That part of your career is
Well,
over.
okay, so in animation it seems like it is, but I'll tell you, one thing about the industry is you're constantly proving yourself. I mean, every single time you are starting from square one, whenever you like change genres, if you change networks. I mean, a Nickelodeon show is different from a Disney show, is different from a Cartoon Network show, and you have to prove yourself in each of those arenas, you know, or even making the skip to writing novels. You know, I was talking to some people last night, and they're like, well, how far are you in your book? And I said, well, I have about 30 pages. And they're like, oh, ha, 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 you're such a screenwriter. We count by pages, not pages. And I was like, oh, wow. And they're like, yeah, well, we tend to read your material probably before anything that was unsolicited, but, you know, you have to really prove yourself to us first, because, you know, you have to be a proven writer. And it's like, wow, I am not a proven writer in this field. So it's just that reminder, you know, never believe your own hype, and never, like, think that you're above that. You're going to always be proving yourself, and you're always going to be putting in the hard work. So.
Awesome. Awesome. Any final questions? Excellent.
Have you had a good time?
What's that?
Have you had a good
I
time?
have had such a good time. This has been such a great convention. I feel
Would you like to go to other conventions?
I would love to go to other conventions.
And be a guest?
Yeah, definitely.
All right.
Okay.
I'll talk to some people.
Well, you make that. Okay,
I can't make any promises.
Okay, all right.
He'll be your con agent.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I know your demands, that you need to play D&D with your husband.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or no go. Thank you so much.
Thank
It was a
you. I
wonderful
really
conversation.
appreciate this. All right.